Late one night in the year 2029, the wind outside the Atacama Desert Observatory in Chile was cold and sharp, whistling softly across the dry land. The sky above was clear, full of bright stars that looked close enough to touch. Inside the observatory, a group of scientists worked quietly, surrounded by the gentle hum of computers and machines. Among them was Dr. Lena Hart, a calm and focused woman who had spent half her life searching for signals from the stars. She wasn't a dreamer like some of her colleagues. She was a scientist who believed in numbers, evidence, and facts. But that night something happened that facts could not easily explain. It was past midnight when the system picked up an odd frequency. It wasn't strong, just a faint pulse hidden deep in the background noise of space. At first, Lena thought it was interference from one of the communication satellites. She almost ignored it. But something about the rhythm made her pause. The pattern repeated every 2.7 seconds, precise and consistent. She zoomed in, cleaned the data, and the sound became clearer. Soft, mechanical, but organized. It wasn't random static. It was deliberate. She called out to her assistant Marco, who was half asleep at his desk. "Marco, come here for a second," she said. He rubbed his eyes and leaned over her shoulder. Together they listened as the machine played the signal again. It was strange, like a heartbeat, a slow pulse of light and sound echoing from somewhere far beyond. Marco frowned. "Could it be pulsar activity?" he asked. Lena shook her head. "No, it's too structured. Nature doesn't repeat patterns this cleanly." They recorded the signal and ran it through the software that compared frequencies with known cosmic sources. Pulsars, quasars, satellites, space probes, everything that usually caused false alarms. But nothing matched. The signal stood alone. When Lena checked the coordinates, her heart skipped. The direction of the signal pointed toward a deep area of space, far outside the solar system, near the edge of a galaxy cluster. It wasn't aimed at Earth. The signal's origin line suggested it was directed somewhere else entirely, toward a distant point millions of light years away. Lena leaned back in her chair, thinking hard. For years, she and her team had been scanning the skies, hoping to find even a hint of intelligent life. But this was different. The signal wasn't meant for them. It was meant for someone else. Yet somehow Earth had caught it, like a message floating through space that had drifted off its original path. She decided to record everything and alert the main team in the morning. But curiosity got the better of her. She spent the rest of the night studying the data. Each pulse contained small variations in timing, tiny shifts that didn't seem random. She plotted the variations into a chart, and suddenly a pattern began to emerge. The shifts were counting in prime numbers, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. A cold chill ran down her spine. Prime numbers were universal in mathematics, used by humans and theoretically by any intelligent civilization to show intentional communication. Someone somewhere had crafted this message carefully. When dawn broke over the desert, the observatory glowed golden in the rising sun. Lena's team gathered around as she explained her discovery. Some were skeptical. "It's probably an echo from some cosmic event," one said. Another added, "Maybe it's a reflection from one of our own deep space probes." But when Lena showed them the coordinates and the clean mathematical structure inside the signal, silence filled the room. They all knew this was no accident. Days passed, and the small group worked tirelessly to clean and decode the transmission. They discovered layers of information hidden in the frequency modulations. It wasn't a voice or sound, it was data, like digital code buried inside radio waves. The more they studied it, the clearer it became that the message was trying to describe something physical. There were measurements, energy readings, and coordinates that didn't correspond to any known human map. Lena stared at the decoded figures on the screen. The data described something massive moving through space, something that absorbed energy rather than reflected it. A void. A wave of darkness that consumed everything it touched. The message repeated one phrase, at least what could be translated as a warning. The timing between pulses increased sharply near the end, as if whoever sent it had tried to emphasize urgency. One night, while the others slept, Lena sat alone in front of the main console. She played the transmission again, listening to the rhythmic beats that had now become familiar. Her mind wandered. Who sent this? How long had it been traveling? Was the sender still alive? The universe was vast and silent, yet here was proof that someone had tried to speak, and their words had reached Earth by mistake. It felt both terrifying and miraculous. The observatory soon became tense. News of the signal leaked among a few other researchers, and curiosity turned into concern. Government officials began asking questions, but Lena and her team weren't ready to share their findings. They needed to be sure. They compared the signal source with known galactic maps and realized it was aimed toward a region that, according to astronomical data, might host several habitable exoplanets. Whoever had sent the message had probably intended it for another civilization living there. But something must have gone wrong. The signal had drifted, weakened, and reached Earth instead. As Lena continued to work, she began to feel the emotional weight of what they'd discovered. This wasn't just science anymore. It was a message from intelligent beings, lost in the darkness of space, carrying information about something dangerous, something capable of destroying entire systems. She imagined a civilization far away, desperate to warn their neighbors, their last attempt to cry for help before being consumed. The idea haunted her. Outside the observatory, the desert stretched endlessly, silent and empty like space itself. Yet inside, humanity's first real contact, unintended contact, was happening quietly. Lena wrote in her journal, "If they didn't mean for us to hear this, what happens now that we did?" She felt both awe and fear. The responsibility was enormous. By the end of the week, the team confirmed beyond doubt that the signal was not a natural phenomenon. Its repetition, structure, and embedded data all pointed to intelligent design. But even more astonishing was the fact that the signal seemed incredibly old, thousands, maybe millions of years old. Time had carried it through the universe until it brushed against Earth's instruments by sheer accident. Humans were never supposed to hear it, yet here it was, now in their hands. That realization changed everything for Lena. It wasn't just about proving life existed elsewhere. It was about understanding that humans had become part of something much bigger, an unseen chain of events stretching across galaxies. She stared again at the blinking cursor on her monitor, where the decoded numbers still glowed faintly. Somewhere out there, an ancient civilization had sent a desperate warning into the stars. It missed its target but found a new listener. And now, for the first time in history, humanity had a choice: ignore what they had heard or try to understand it. The night outside grew still again, but the silence felt different now. It was no longer empty, it was waiting. The following days at the observatory were filled with both excitement and fear. The signal had become the center of everyone's attention. Every scientist in the small team felt that something far bigger than themselves had landed in their hands. Dr. Lena Hart barely slept. She kept listening to the recording again and again, each time discovering something new hidden inside the strange rhythmic pulses. The message seemed to be more than a simple warning. It was like a map written in a language of numbers and light. Marco, her assistant, sat next to her one evening, watching the graphs flicker on the screen. "It's like they wanted someone to find it," he said quietly. Lena didn't answer at first. Her eyes stayed fixed on the data. "No," she finally whispered. "They didn't want us to find it. We were never supposed to hear this." The team started decoding the message more deeply. It took hours of calculations, programming, and long arguments over what each signal meant. Slowly, they began to understand that it was made of different layers, like pages in a book, one hidden beneath another. The first layer showed repeating prime numbers, a sign of intelligent origin. The second layer carried coordinates written in cosmic reference points, stars, distances, and light angles. When Lena compared them to known maps of the galaxy, her stomach tightened. The coordinates didn't point toward Earth. They described a region of space over 2 million light-years away, where human telescopes had once spotted several planets that could support life. The final layer was the most difficult to translate. It seemed to describe a movement, something vast and invisible drifting across the stars. The numbers showed changes in radiation and energy levels, as if the message was tracking the path of something dangerous. It looked like a storm, but not a normal one. It absorbed energy instead of giving it off. The pattern showed that this void wave, as they began calling it, was moving toward a cluster of inhabited worlds. It was eating light, swallowing power from stars, leaving nothing but darkness behind. When Lena shared this discovery with her team, silence filled the room. Marco looked pale. "You mean this thing destroys suns?" he asked. Lena nodded slowly. If the data is right, yes. It destroys everything that gives off energy. It's like a hole that keeps growing. The realization struck everyone hard. Whoever had sent the message had seen the wave coming. They had tried to warn others, maybe hoping another civilization could help. But that civilization was likely gone now, and their message had traveled across the universe until it reached the wrong world, Earth. For a few days, the team worked in secret. They didn't tell the government or media. They feared that if the news spread, it would be dismissed as a hoax or hidden for political reasons. Lena knew what usually happened when scientists reported something this extraordinary: bureaucracy, denial, and control. Instead, she reached out to a private network of scientists who worked with SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Many of them had spent their lives scanning the skies hoping to find something like this. When they saw the data, most were speechless. One of the senior astrophysicists in the network, Dr. Arun Das from India, said softly during their encrypted meeting, "If this is real, it changes everything we know about our place in the universe." But even among scientists, there were disagreements. Some believed the message was just a natural cosmic phenomenon, like a collapsing black hole or gamma wave. Others, like Lena, were certain it was a deliberate transmission, a warning. They started comparing the structure of the signal to other known data patterns. It showed an intentional design. The pulse strength changed rhythmically to form shapes, like diagrams drawn in radio waves. When decoded into visual graphs, the shapes resembled orbital paths and energy fields. It was clear that whoever sent this wanted others to understand the danger scientifically. Lena felt a strange mix of pride and sorrow. Pride that humanity had discovered something beyond imagination, and sorrow that it might already be too late for whoever sent it. One night she stood outside the observatory, staring at the vast black sky. The stars seemed peaceful, but she couldn't stop thinking about the darkness moving silently between them. It wasn't just about other civilizations anymore. It was about the universe itself being vulnerable. As the decoding continued, the team realized the message had a timeline. The numbers were counting down from a starting point long in the past. When they ran the calculations, they discovered that the wave might already be approaching nearby regions of the galaxy. Though it was still millions of light years away from Earth, it was moving fast. The thought made Lena's heart pound. "If it travels unchecked," she said during a meeting, "it could eventually reach us too." That statement changed everything. What had started as scientific curiosity now turned into a race to understand and respond. The team decided to prepare a detailed report to send to the international space agencies. But before they could finalize it, a strange thing happened. The observatory system received another burst of the same frequency, but this time it was weaker, fragmented, as if something or someone was trying again to communicate. Marco ran to the console. "It's the same signal," he shouted. Lena quickly began recording. The new message repeated part of the old one but added a new pattern at the end, a string of signals that looked like coordinates, but they didn't match anything known. Lena studied the numbers for hours and realized they pointed to the source of the first transmission, a small region near a dying star. The star was ancient, its light fading slowly. It was possible that around it, some kind of beacon had been left behind, still broadcasting the message even after its creators were gone. The idea gave Lena chills. The beacon was like a ghost, endlessly repeating a cry for help into the darkness. The team sent their findings to trusted contacts in different countries, scientists in the United States, Germany, Japan, and Australia. Within days, the information spread quietly among the global scientific community. A secret collaboration began to form. They called themselves Project Resonance. Their mission was to verify the signal, trace its source, and confirm whether the void wave threat was real. It was a small group of humans, working together across borders, united not by politics or money, but by curiosity and concern. During one late-night call, Dr. Arun Das told Lena, "If this wave is real and spreading, then the beings who sent this message were trying to save others. Now, by chance, we are the ones who heard it. Maybe it's our turn to do the same." Those words stayed in Lena's mind. Humanity had never received a message from another civilization before. And now their first contact wasn't a greeting or introduction. It was a warning, possibly the last words of a dying world. The thought filled her with both sadness and determination. She decided they couldn't just study the message. They had to respond. But that decision wouldn't be simple. Governments began to take interest when strange signals were detected by other observatories. Soon, questions were being asked. Lena's team found themselves under pressure to hand over all their data. Some officials claimed it was classified material that could cause public panic. Lena refused at first. She feared the truth would be buried. She believed humanity deserved to know that they were not alone, and that someone out there had once trusted the universe enough to send a warning. The tension grew. Late one night, Lena sat alone in the observatory again, listening to the pulse that had changed her life. She whispered to herself, "We weren't supposed to hear you, but maybe that's why we did." She began drafting a plan, a way to use Earth's communication arrays to reply. If the original message could travel across the galaxy, maybe a reply could too. The team didn't know if anyone was still listening on the other side, but they all agreed that they couldn't stay silent. Humanity had stumbled upon a desperate voice from the stars, a message meant for others yet heard by them. It was now their responsibility to decide what to do next. As Lena saved her new calculations and looked out at the vast night sky, she felt a deep truth settling in her heart. The universe had spoken by accident, but maybe accidents were how destiny worked. The world inside Dr. Lena Hart's small observatory had changed completely. What started as a quiet discovery was now turning into a storm of choices and danger. The signal had been decoded, and everyone in her team knew it was real. They were holding proof that intelligent life existed beyond Earth, and that life had sent a warning. But this message wasn't meant for humans, and that truth made everything more complicated. Every day brought new pressure. Calls came from government agencies asking questions. Some were polite, others were not. Officials wanted data, full access to the observatory systems, and control over the research. Lena's instincts told her not to hand it over. She feared that once the authorities got involved, the truth would disappear behind locked doors. Governments might hide it to prevent panic or to use it for their own advantage. She had seen it happen before with smaller discoveries, and this one was far too important to lose. Her team gathered one night around the long wooden table in the observatory meeting room. The air was thick with tension. Marco looked tired, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "We can't keep this secret forever," he said softly. "They already know we found something. If we keep hiding it, they'll just take it from us." Lena looked at him for a long time. "If they take it," she replied, "the world may never know what we found. They'll bury it, lock it away, and say it was just interference. We'll lose our chance to act." Another scientist, Maria, spoke up. "But act how, Lena? This message wasn't even meant for us. What can we do? We don't even know if anyone is alive out there to hear us." Lena stood and looked out the large window toward the desert sky. The stars shimmered in silence. "Maybe they're not alive anymore," she said quietly. "But the warning they sent is still moving through space. That means something. Maybe it means they wanted someone, anyone, to hear it." That night marked the beginning of their decision. They would take control of their discovery and act without permission. It was risky, but it was the only way to make sure the message wasn't silenced. Through encrypted messages and secret calls, Lena reached out to a few trusted scientists around the world, people she knew wouldn't betray the cause. Among them was Dr. Arun Das in India, Professor Ingrid Keller in Germany, and an American data specialist named Tom Reyes, who worked for a private space company. Together they formed a quiet alliance, a network of minds connected by one purpose: to verify the message and figure out how to respond. They shared data files across hidden servers, using fake research names and project codes to avoid being traced. Each of them worked from different corners of the planet, decoding small parts of the message. Slowly, the full picture started to emerge. The message was much older than anyone thought. Based on the energy decay and drift of the signal, it was estimated to be millions of years old. Whoever had sent it was long gone, but the danger it described, the void wave wire, was still out there moving. When Lena heard that, she felt something heavy in her chest. "They died trying to warn someone," she whispered. "We can't just ignore that." But not everyone agreed with her idea of acting on it. During one of their late-night virtual meetings, Ingrid Keller argued, "Lena, you're talking about warning alien civilizations that may not even exist anymore. It's not our business to interfere. Our duty is to study, not to act like cosmic saviors." Lena didn't raise her voice, but her tone was firm. "It doesn't matter who the message was for. It reached us. Maybe that's enough reason to respond. If we can confirm where it came from, maybe we can find a way to continue their warning. If we don't, then their final message dies with us." Tom Reyes, who had access to several satellite databases, interrupted. "If we're serious about this, we'll need the big arrays. I can try to get data from the Deep Space Quantum Array project. They're testing new communication frequencies. We could amplify the signal and trace its point of origin precisely." Everyone agreed to try, but Lena knew this step would attract attention. Using a global communication array required permissions, and if they were caught, they could lose everything. Still, she couldn't let fear stop them. The message had chosen them, even if by accident, and she believed fate had a reason. The following week, they secretly connected to the Deep Space Quantum Array's test network. It was one of the most powerful systems ever built, designed to send quantum-encoded messages across enormous distances. With Tom's help, they redirected a small portion of the system's power to scan the origin point of the alien signal. The process took hours. They watched in silence as the data lines scrolled across their screens. Finally, the system locked onto a faint source, an old beacon orbiting a dying star at the edge of a distant galaxy. The moment the coordinates appeared, the room filled with nervous excitement. Marco couldn't believe it. "So it's real," he said, his voice shaking. "Someone really left a machine out there." Lena nodded slowly. "A beacon that's still transmitting after millions of years. It was built to last, to make sure the warning kept going even after they were gone. But as the joy of discovery faded, a harder question took its place. What now?" Lena sat quietly for a long time that night. She thought about what it meant to act. They couldn't travel to that beacon or to the worlds in danger, but they could send a reply, a signal amplified through Earth's technology, to warn others who might still exist nearby. The problem was, sending such a message would require international cooperation, and it would reveal to the world what they had found. Her choice was clear: stay silent and safe, or speak up and risk everything. The next morning, she decided to reach out to a few influential contacts inside the scientific branch of the United Nations. She shared parts of the data under a fake project name, hoping to catch their attention. To her surprise, it worked. Within days, she received a call from an official who had been following the strange frequency reports. The man's tone was serious. "Dr. Hart, if what you're saying is true, then this is not just a scientific discovery. It's a matter of global significance." A secret meeting was arranged. Lena traveled to Geneva, where she met representatives from several space agencies, NASA, ESA, and ISRO. They listened as she explained everything: the signal, the decoded warning, and the discovery of the beacon. At first, the room was filled with disbelief. Some thought it was an elaborate hoax, but when she showed them the mathematical consistency and historical data, the skepticism faded into silence. Finally, one of the directors leaned forward. "If this wave is real," he said slowly, "then those who sent the message were trying to prevent a catastrophe, and now by accident the responsibility has fallen to us." That was the turning point. The scientists who once doubted her began to see the truth. Plans were made to combine global communication arrays and send out a signal that could reach the same direction the alien beacon was aimed toward. They called the mission Echo Sentinel, because humanity would become the echo of the original warning. When Lena returned to Chile, her small team welcomed her with relief. The secret was out, but it had become something bigger than any of them. For the first time in history, the nations of Earth were preparing to send a united message into space, not to announce their existence, but to warn others about danger. As the days passed, more scientists joined the mission. Engineers worked on boosting signal strength, mathematicians refined the message code, and governments cautiously allowed funding under strict confidentiality. Humanity had chosen to act, not because it was their duty, but because compassion demanded it. One evening, Lena stood outside the observatory again. The desert wind blew softly, and above her the stars glittered like tiny sparks of hope. She thought about the beings who had sent the message long ago. They were gone now, but their words had found new life through humans. She smiled faintly and whispered, "We heard you, and we're listening." The decision to respond was final. From that moment on, humanity wasn't just a silent observer of the universe. They were part of a story that began millions of years ago. a story of survival, connection, and unexpected hope that had crossed galaxies to reach them. The whole world had begun to move quietly under one name, Project Echo Sentinel. What started as a secret between a few scientists was now a global mission involving thousands of people, but very few outside the scientific and space community knew what it was truly about. The public was told it was a deep space communication experiment. Only those on the inside understood the truth, that humanity was preparing to send a message across galaxies, a warning meant to save others from a disaster that could one day reach Earth too. Dr. Lena Hart had become one of the main coordinators of the mission. She had never imagined her life would lead to this moment. From her small observatory in Chile, she was now in constant contact with the most advanced research centers on Earth. Her team had grown, and the work never stopped. The scientists were racing against time. The decoded message from the alien signal had predicted the movement of the void wave, and its path had slightly shifted. It was no longer just moving toward distant worlds. The updated data showed it might one day pass through the edges of our own galaxy. The thought of that dark, energy-consuming wave made everyone uneasy. The mission had two parts. The first was to prepare a new signal, stronger, clearer, and translated in a way that any intelligent life form could understand. The second was to send it with enough power to reach across thousands of light years. Every country contributed something: satellites, deep space antennas, data processors, and funds. For once, humanity was united not by war or politics, but by the shared belief that they could make a difference, even for beings they had never met. But the pressure was enormous. Governments wanted results quickly. Journalists had begun to suspect that something more serious was happening. Rumors spread online that scientists were hiding proof of alien contact. Conspiracy theories grew, and that made the project even harder to manage. Lena spent her days balancing science and politics. She often stood in front of government boards explaining why the message had to be sent, why it mattered. Some officials believed her. Others feared it would cause panic or even provoke something dangerous. What if sending a signal attracts attention we don't want? One of them asked during a tense meeting. Lena's answer was calm but firm. The universe already knows we exist. This isn't about us being found. It's about us doing what's right. In the middle of all the pressure, the technical challenges began. The global communication system they planned to use had never been tested at such a scale. It was risky. If it failed, they might not get another chance. The Deep Space Quantum Array, the main instrument of the mission, had to synchronize with several other observatories around the world. Every pulse of energy had to be perfectly timed. One mistake could ruin the entire transmission. For weeks, the scientists worked in silence and focus. The laboratories were filled with the sound of computers humming, data scrolling across dozens of monitors, and the occasional burst of applause when something finally worked. Lena's team had designed the message in 3 layers: one mathematical, one visual, and one symbolic. The mathematical part used prime numbers and universal constants, language any intelligent species could recognize. The visual layer included diagrams that explained energy patterns and movement of the void wave. The symbolic layer carried something more human, a sequence that represented compassion and unity, encoded in a repeating spiral. Lena spent one long night staring at that spiral on the screen. It was beautiful and simple. Marco stood beside her, sipping cold coffee. "Do you think they'll understand it?" he asked. Lena smiled faintly. "Maybe not the way we do, but they'll know it's not random. They'll know someone cared enough to warn them." The day of the transmission came faster than anyone expected. The world's biggest antennas, one in Australia, one in the United States, and one in South Africa, were all connected through a shared system. The control center was set up in Geneva, where representatives from every major space agency gathered. Lena stood at the front of the main console, surrounded by screens showing real-time data from each station. Everyone was tense but ready. The air felt electric. Synchronization confirmed. Marco's voice came through her headset. "Signal path stable." Lena looked up at the large countdown clock. "Begin transmission in 30 seconds. When the clock hit 0, a deep vibration filled the room. The arrays around the world released bursts of quantum-encoded energy into the dark sky. The message left Earth, racing at the speed of light toward the ancient beacon's last known coordinates. Everyone stared silently at the data streams, watching the transmission stabilize. and spread. It was like watching a message in a bottle being thrown into an infinite ocean, hoping someone somewhere might find it. But success did not come easily. Midway through the transmission, one of the satellite systems in Australia began to malfunction. The power output started dropping, threatening to break the synchronization. If the pulse pattern broke, the entire signal could scatter and be lost. Panic filled the control room. Engineers shouted updates. "We're losing Array 3, someone yelled. Lena grabbed the microphone. "Divert backup power. Use the Chile observatory relay." Marco's voice came back, strained but determined. "We're on it. Hold the signal steady." Minutes felt like hours. Sweat dripped down Lena's face as she watched the readings flicker. If they failed now, all their work, all of humanity's effort, would mean nothing. Then slowly the power stabilized. The readings evened out. The signal was holding again. The room erupted with quiet relief. The transmission continued for 6 more minutes before shutting down automatically. Silence fell across the room. It was done. The message had been sent. No one spoke for several moments. Lena felt her body go weak, as if all her strength had drained out with the signal. Then applause broke out. Soft at first, then louder. People hugged, some even cried. For the first time in history, humanity had spoken into the stars not out of curiosity, but out of compassion. Still, not everyone felt relief. The scientists knew that sending the message didn't guarantee it would be received. Space was vast, and the signal might take years, centuries to reach anyone. But there was something deeper in their hearts, something unspoken. They all felt a strange sense of connection, as if they had reached across the endless darkness and touched another world's memory. Over the next few days, the mission team monitored for any response. Nothing came. The data lines stayed silent. Governments began to move on to other priorities, calling the mission a scientific success, but a communication failure. Funding was quietly reduced. The world returned to its usual rhythm, but Lena couldn't rest. She spent her nights at the observatory again, staring at the stars and replaying the signal they had sent. One cold night, Marco joined her outside. "You think they'll answer?" he asked softly. Lena looked at the horizon where the sky met the desert. "Maybe not now, maybe long after we're gone, but someone will hear it," she smiled faintly. "And when they do, they'll know they weren't alone." Weeks passed and life seemed to return to normal. But deep down, Lena knew something had changed. The mission had taught humanity something it had forgotten, that empathy could cross not only borders but also galaxies. The signal might have been small compared to the vastness of space, but its meaning was enormous. It was proof that humans could care about others they had never seen, others who might not even exist anymore. Then one night something unexpected happened. The observatory's receiver picked up a faint pulse, weak but familiar. It was the same frequency as the alien message. Marco ran to the control panel, his hand shaking. "It's coming from the same direction," he said. Lena's heart began to race. The signal was fragmented, almost like an echo, but it was undeniably artificial. They quickly recorded it and began to decode the patterns. Hours passed. The fragments slowly took shape. The final translation revealed only one line, repeated over and over in universal code. "We heard you." Lena stared at the screen, unable to speak. Tears filled her eyes. It didn't matter who they were, how far away, or what form they took. Somewhere in the vast darkness, someone had received the message. Humanity's voice had reached another world, and they had answered. In that moment, the long nights, the fear, the exhaustion, all of it felt worth it. Humanity had done something beautiful. They had taken a message not meant for them, turned it into hope, and sent it back into the stars. The galaxy had heard them, and now the silence of space felt a little less lonely. The small words, "We heard you," changed everything. At first, no one believed it. The message seemed too short, too simple to be real. But as the scientists analyzed it, they realized the signal contained a deeper pattern within the repetition. The pulse timing, the energy frequency, and even the pauses were deliberate. It wasn't random. It was intelligent. Someone somewhere had heard humanity's call and chosen to answer. The world that had nearly forgotten Project Echo Sentinel suddenly came alive again. News channels everywhere began reporting it. "Possible alien response detected," they said, their voices trembling with excitement and fear. Dr. Lena Hart sat in her lab, her eyes fixed on the data streaming across the monitor. It didn't feel real. Months of silence, endless waiting, and now this. Marco burst into the room. a mix of disbelief and joy on his face. "It's confirmed," he said breathlessly. "3 observatories picked up the same signal. It's real, Lena, they answered us." For a moment, Lena couldn't speak. Her throat tightened and her hands trembled as she whispered, "They heard us." It was not just scientific success, it was emotional, human, and deeply spiritual. Humanity had spoken to the stars, and the stars had finally spoken back. The message spread across the world faster than light could travel. People filled the streets holding signs that read, "We're not alone." Churches, temples, and mosques overflowed with people praying and celebrating. For the first time in centuries, humans weren't divided by belief, race, or country. They were united by wonder. Politicians called emergency meetings, scientists worked without rest, and governments opened secret files that had been locked away for decades. Every nation wanted to be part of what came next, but not everyone saw it as a miracle. Some feared it. The same words that brought hope also brought doubt. "We heard you." Was it a friendly message or a warning? Was it gratitude, or was it a sign that something far bigger and more dangerous was on its way? While the public celebrated, the world's military forces quietly began to prepare for the unknown. Satellites were repositioned, new defense systems activated, and secret space agencies started tracking the exact direction of the signal. Meanwhile, Lena's team worked day and night to decode the deeper patterns hidden within the short message. Using quantum models and AI simulations, they found that the signal contained coordinates, not just random ones, but exact positions in deep space. It was pointing toward a region near the edge of the galaxy, close to where the original alien distress call had come from. The implication was shocking. The beings who had sent the original message were not extinct after all. They had survived, or maybe they had rebuilt, and now they were answering back. The United Nations called for a global meeting. Leaders, scientists, and even philosophers gathered in Geneva again. The mood was tense but filled with awe. Lena stood before the assembly to present her findings. "The message is real," she said calmly, "and it carries more than just words. It carries direction. They're inviting us to listen closer, or perhaps to follow." The room erupted in whispers. Some were amazed, others terrified. One official asked, "Are you suggesting we send a mission?" Lena hesitated before replying, "Not just a mission, a connection. We owe it to them, and to ourselves, to answer properly." Months passed, and Earth began preparing for the greatest journey in human history. For the first time, rival nations shared technology and resources to build a joint deep space craft. It was called the Aurora. Its mission was simple but daring: to travel toward the coordinates hidden in the alien signal and make direct contact. The crew was selected carefully: scientists, linguists, engineers, and one representative from every continent. And of course, Lena Hart was among them. Launch day was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Billions of people watched live as the Aurora lifted off into the dark sky, its engines glowing bright against the horizon. Children waved flags and old men cried, remembering how far humanity had come, from fighting over land to reaching for the stars together. Lena sat inside the ship, her heart pounding as she looked out the window. The Earth below looked peaceful and small. "For them," she whispered softly, thinking of the unknown beings who had sent that simple message. For all of us, the journey took months. The Aurora traveled farther than any human had gone before, guided by the coordinates hidden in the alien signal. During the long silence of space, the crew often talked about what awaited them. Some dreamed of meeting gentle beings with glowing eyes. Others worried they would find ruins, a reminder of civilizations lost to the void wave. But Lena kept faith. She believed the answer, "We heard you," meant hope. One quiet night, as the ship drifted through an empty region of space, the communication panel suddenly lit up. A soft pulse came through, faint but rhythmic, matching the pattern of the alien signal. The crew rushed to their stations. "It's them again," Marco said, his voice shaking. The pulses grew stronger, forming a repeating sequence. Then, without warning, a massive light appeared ahead of the ship, a glowing structure floating in the darkness. It wasn't a planet or a star. It looked like a living monument made of crystal and energy, shifting and breathing like it was alive. The crew stared in awe. The Aurora slowed its approach, and sensors began to pick up strange readings. Familiar, yet unlike anything ever seen. The structure pulsed with the same rhythm as the original message. It was a beacon, but this time it was active, responding to their arrival. "It's waiting for us," Lena said softly. The ship's external lights illuminated the surface, revealing intricate markings, symbols that looked like a mixture of math, art, and language. Lena and her team decoded the markings over several hours. The translation that emerged left everyone silent. It read, "We lived because you cared. The wave has ended. You have saved more than you know." The crew stared at the words in disbelief. The beings they had tried to warn had survived. Humanity's message, born from compassion and hope, had changed the fate of another world. But the message didn't end there. It continued, unfolding into a visual projection. The inside of the beacon lit up, showing holographic images of alien cities rebuilding, skies clearing, and the void wave dissipating like smoke. The visuals shifted again, this time showing Earth. The blue planet shimmered in light as if the message itself was saying thank you. Lena felt tears fill her eyes. They hadn't just been heard, they had been understood. As the crew floated near the beacon, they noticed something else. The structure began to emit a low musical hum. It resonated through the ship, almost like a song. The vibrations weren't random. They matched the frequency of human heartbeats. It was their way of speaking, of sharing emotion without words. For a long moment, everyone sat quietly, listening to that alien melody. It felt like peace, like a bridge between worlds that had never met but somehow shared the same soul. After hours of observation, the beacon's glow began to fade. The final message appeared briefly on their screens before the light vanished completely. "You are not alone. We are watching the stars with you." The beacon went silent, but the crew didn't feel sadness. They felt connection. Humanity had reached across space and found friendship, not through power, but through kindness. When the Aurora returned to Earth months later, the world was waiting. The landing was celebrated as the greatest achievement in human history. Lena stood before a massive crowd, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. But she didn't talk about technology or discovery. She spoke about unity. "We didn't just save another world," she said. "We saved ourselves. We remembered what it means to care, even for strangers we may never meet." Her words echoed around the world. Borders began to soften, global cooperation grew, and humanity entered a new era, not of conquest, but of connection. Children learned in schools about the message that saved the galaxy, and scientists continued to search the skies, not for conquest, but for companionship. Years later, when Lena was old and gray, she often visited the same observatory where it all began. She would sit under the stars, the cool wind brushing her face, and remember the day they first heard the alien distress call. The sky seemed quieter now, calmer, almost as if the universe itself was resting. She smiled softly and whispered to the stars, "We heard you too." And somewhere far across the endless dark, a faint echo pulsed back, soft, rhythmic, and warm, like a heartbeat shared between worlds.